really hard act to follow. So this is now my final introduction, and I have come to find writing introductions quite difficult actually, and no more than Dav's. I mentioned earlier that Dav has 25 years of experience in developing, teaching and working with mindfulness. Springer's Encyclopedia of Sidhis 2017 cited Dav as an acclaimed expert in meditation, mind, consciousness studies and holistic, non-ego-based psychotherapy. His mindfulness-based approaches have earned him international respect and recognition within both public and private health sectors. From these, you can conclude that he's a very experienced and highly respected man. I could tell you about his extensive scientific education with degrees in chemistry, biology, and a master's in transpersonal psychology and consciousness studies, so you know that experience is backed by knowledge. We could discuss his guidance from highly esteemed teachers and academic peers. He's both historic and in our time. Keeping his work highly contemporary, incredibly effective and enlightening, so you know he's got good lineage. In addition to this, we could talk about, in addition to the holistic health and well-being, we could discuss in terms of his successes as an entrepreneur. The Director and Strategic Advisor for Diabetes Digital Health Limited, diabetes.co.uk, the largest and leading digital health company for diabetes in the world. We could discuss the free low-carbon program that has revolutionised over 250,000 people with diabetes to regain control over their health and demonstrate the possibility of reversing type 2 diabetes during 2016-17. The results of this, which was so spectacular, made the page of the new front page of New Scientist in June 2017. The Times, the Daily Mail, to mention a few, a watershed project that has worldwide implications. But in all honesty, if I didn't say something a bit more, I'd feel like I failed. All of this is quite true, but it is the application of all these accolades, education and experience that makes them outstanding. The application to everyday people that you've heard from today. When an individual reaches out, I have seen them connect to them and their journey in a relatable way that provides significant insight for that individual over and over again. Dav meets people where they are, not where they want to be or where the world wants them to be, but where they are right there. And he meets them on their path. I recently read A True Teacher Empowers, and is delighted for their students when they personally own what they have learned and put it into practice. I couldn't have said myself better. Dav will speak to us about meditation and extraordinary experience, and it will be followed by meditation. So with great pleasure and a croaky voice, I welcome our teacher, Dav.
Good evening. How do I even follow that? I was thinking of doing Theresa May's robot clowns, but I thought it would just be a bit too much in a cathedral, bloke in a beard doing that stuff. Can't believe that we're on the 6th event, and we've managed to take mindfulness from its stress, depression, anxiety label and moved it into a new domain every single year. It's been a privilege to be part of the Flame Centre and the Flame team of volunteers. And as is the nature of a flame, to burn and to shed light, that's exactly what the Centre has done. The Centre has burned boundaries between cultures. I mean, just think about it. You've got a bloke in a beard and a turban in an Anglican cathedral talking to you about Buddhist meditation. I mean, how many more barriers do you need broken? Yeah? It's broken boundaries between individuals. It's even broken boundaries which are trapped, or which trap people in stress, in anxiety, in depression, and as we heard from all our case studies, OCD and much, much more. But what's more important is that it's also shed light. It's not just about burning. It's about shedding light and challenging certain ideas which, as Francesca mentioned, are a bit unmentionable. Just the fact that we are talking about extraordinary experiences here, experiences which are beyond the realm of making sense with our regular worldview, goes to demonstrate what the Flame Center has been doing. The Flame Center has asked one critical question. What does it mean to be alive? What's your life about? Is it simply about collecting money, chasing wealth, status, prestige? Or is it a social media identity that we want now? So many selfies, so little self-knowledge seems to be the order of the day. The flame has also shed light and challenged some of the ideas in terms of mind-body connection. The mind and the body are connected. You saw how Jessica brought your body alive through sound. How your mind began to rest as you engaged in it. When you get fearful, your blood pressure rises. That's your mind making a difference to your physiology. And the center has done that. It's brought some light to mind-body reaction. And it's also provided something called lifestyle medicine. What does that mean? If we bring in things like Ayurveda, if we bring in things like Qigong, Tai Chi, Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, combine this with good grounded meditation, we have a recipe for good health. And that's what the center has done. Each and every individual that has stood here today and shared their experience have gone through that journey where conventional medicine has failed them. They have turned to what seemed to be alternative, but the funny thing about this alternative stuff is that it's been around for 5,000 years, 10,000 years. Betamax didn't last 10 years. When things don't work, we forget them. The fact that we can talk about yoga, meditation, Qigong, Tai Chi, all of this today means that it's worked, and it has been working. And it's about time we brought the authentic stuff out, because the way the world is going and the way our health is going, it seems that we do need desperate help today. To have lived a life and not know who you are is like buying a ticket to a roller coaster, the best roller coaster. Getting the kit, standing at the queue, getting to the ride, but failing to get on the ride. That's how we seem to be living our life. And we run around chasing things that really are of no value. Think about it. You might spend 10 years working to the bone to buy that one thing that you need in your house. But the moment you leave life, it's going to be on the jumbo set. Sacrificing life, sacrificing health, sacrificing time. For what? Is that what it means to be alive? These are the central questions that the Flame Center has tried to bring out. And as we have seen this evening, there's a lot more to being human than collecting plastic. If we look at the last 5 years' events, in 2013 we started, when most of the world was asleep to meditation or mindfulness, certainly the Western world. And we introduced mind-body medicine. 2014, with our colleague Eduardo from London Lyric Therapy, we demonstrated that you can not just change unhealthy states like depression, anxiety, etc., but you can cultivate positive states, positive psychology, compassion, self-care, gratitude, acceptance. The number of people we come across who have difficulty in accepting who they are. The bad news is you can only be who you are. The good news is you can only be who you are. It depends on how you look at yourself. In 2015, our event was Mindfulness and Neuroscience. And we were privileged to have Dr. Amy Bilderberg from Oxford University, who showed us that meditation can't just remove these states of depression, anxiety, etc., but actually physically change your brain. 8 weeks of meditation will change your brain structure. Ivana last year shared her research here, and that was showing that sustained practice, meditation and yoga changes 7,000 of your genetic markers. 7,000. There is research to show that these genetic markers are carried for 14 generations. But those who know about consciousness tradition know that it's actually more than 21 generations. And in time, science will catch up. In 2016, we had Dr. Miguel Frias here, and we discussed 2 things: personal transformation and the side effects of meditation. What we have heard today, the positive stuff, but there are also some not so positive stuff. And Miguel's book, The Buddha Pill, is an absolute essential resource for anyone in meditation. So we demonstrated that meditation is important, but we also demonstrated that there's a difference between the McDonald's version of meditation, mindfulness, or there is the real thing as in mindfulness. And it's important to know the difference. And last year we were privileged to have Professor Les Lancaster, who's here today again, to share with us mindfulness and spiritual intelligence. What does spiritual intelligence mean? It's not simply about becoming happy, clappy and religious. It's about finding your authentic self. And Les, with his work, demonstrated that there seems to be an interaction between mysticism and science, between consciousness and spirituality, between mindfulness, consciousness, mind, and self-actualization. What are these events demonstrating? They're demonstrating there's more to you than meets the eye. There's more to you what you've been led to believe or what you believe about yourself. The impact of meditation is all very well known. We all know the effect it has on health, immunity, blood pressure, etc., etc. But what is really less known about is these extraordinary events, and I'll go through them in a moment. But before I touch extraordinary events in meditation, I want to bring 3 concerns which I think are important in the context of meditation. The first concern is the definition that we're using. Mindfulness is defined as non-judgmental, present-centered awareness. Non-judgmental, moment-to-moment awareness. Non-judgmental, breath-by-breath awareness. You will have noticed this word non-judgmental is fundamental to its definition. I would say that this is misleading. And the reason it's misleading is the whole idea of meditation is that it provides you with clear, lucid awareness so you can see the stories you're telling yourself. You can see the little self-talk you have with yourself. And unless you can discern those stories which create hate, which create isolation, which create self-criticism, which create victimhood, which create fear, which create anger, unless you can discern those stories from the ones that don't do that, how can you be non-judgmental? In fact, you may begin mindfulness as non-judgmental awareness, but true meditation begins when we begin to reflect and see how we treat ourselves, what we're saying to ourselves, how we talk to ourselves. The second concern I have is the total lack of support in terms of development and transformation. Mindfulness is not about stress, anxiety and depression. These they can deal with. What it's about is to know yourself. What it's about is to grow and crash through your ego barriers. It's not always a pleasant event. But without the adequate support, where do you go? Think about this. So imagine someone has learned how to swim in a little kiddie's paddling pool. Would you want this individual to go and teach you how to swim in the Atlantic? Worse still, would you want them to teach your children how to swim in the Atlantic? Third thing, do you think they have enough experience and ability to get anyone out of any difficulty if they were swimming in the Atlantic? The answer is no. But that's exactly what we have. We have people who go through these 1-year, 2-year meditation courses at universities and begin teaching, which is fine. But when such events take place, like for example with Jackie, spontaneous healing, running with the leopards, eagles flying to her, or with Julie, when she's hearing voices telling her something, where does she go to? The person who's learned this from a university? Unless you have 10 years of personal experience and a lineage where something happens, you can access knowledge that can explain that and provide some guidance, then I feel the individual is not really ready to train others. And at best, it's negligent, and at worst, it is irresponsible and dangerous. The third part is again a follow-up on the ongoing support. So we have people who've done these 8-week courses and they're left to their own devices. One thing that we can say about the center is in 2013, when it first began its mindfulness workshops, it at the same time established an ongoing class drop-in center, drop-in classes to ensure that individuals who travel down this path had somewhere to go. And if anyone is thinking of teaching meditation or working with meditation, then I think one of the most essential parts is to create a self-perpetuating support group, a communal group. Jessica touched on something very important. We tend to go home and live in our little isolated bubbles. Meditation isn't a solitary event. It has a communal space, working together. The beautiful music we heard earlier on, most of these people were written off. The doctors themselves said, it's unlikely they're going to recover. But you heard them playing music today. That's 2 years on. How do you think that happened? There's more to you than meets the eye. The impact of meditation, obviously, as I've said, is starting to really take hold, and over the last 20 years, it has grown exponentially. So, let's talk about these extraordinary experiences. Just like the word meditation had to be translated to the word mindfulness, because it was a little bit toxic to those psychology types. They had to change the word extraordinary experiences to supercognitive abilities. It's okay, a rose is a rose by any other name. So what are they? Clairaudience, clairvoyance, telepathy, retrocognitive knowledge. I'll tell you about that one, it's quite interesting. Telepathic knowledge, and spontaneous healing. So these are the ones that have been established or identified over the last few years, but there's a lot more. Clairaudience, what's that? That's when you hear something. And you will find that people who meditate, it's always, or predominantly, it's when they're coming out of their session that they'll hear something. they'll hear a voice, or they'll hear something being said to them. Now, if I was to go that to my regular psychologist and say, by the way, I'm hearing voices, what do you think the diagnosis would be? Psychosis? Hallucinogenics? Or just simply out of it? So do you understand the situation we're in? We need to put more focus on this. Clairvoyance, when you have a visual impression of something that's happening somewhere else. Telepathic knowing, as Jessica communicated, knowing without communication. Retrocognitive knowledge. Now this is another interesting translation. What we really mean is past life information. But I can't say that, because if we say that, religious paradigms are changed and scientific understandings are challenged. So we'll call it retrocognitive knowledge. So what happens is people who sit there meditating occasionally will have an image, information, which is to do with the past. And it's very useful in the present to do with phobias, to do with fears, to do with relationships. So they can't be dismissed. Predictive dreaming, when you have a dream that unfolds over the next few days or months. Telepathic knowing and spontaneous healing. Because of our cultural conditioning, and because we are blindfolded by religious and scientific worldviews, which are outdated, when someone has such an experience, they are ridiculed. Do you know how brave it means for those people to come here and speak about this? They are ridiculed, they are dismissed, not even acknowledged, and most of the time they are left feeling that there's something wrong with them. So there is a need to recognize that meditation leads to far greater abilities and capabilities within yourself, provided you follow a guided path. So how many people have these incidences of meditation? Between 2008 and 2011, there was some research done with 1,120 people who meditated regularly. Of those 1,120 people, more than 50% had an experience which they would describe as extraordinary, either all the time they were meditating or most of the time they were meditating. That's 50%. Of the 50%, majority of those experiences was where they heard a voice or they had telepathic knowledge. And all of them said that this information was useful and meaningful for them. We've only touched a few of them. These supercognitive abilities are very well known in any tradition that has followed this consciousness-based understanding of what it means to be you. There are, in fact, 18 of them. I've only mentioned 5. I wouldn't mention all of them because you'll throw me out and have me committed. But I'll mention 2 of them. One of them is absence of food and thirst. And if you want to see a real case study about this, go onto YouTube and type in the Buddha boy Nepal. And you'll find that this 15-year-old kid in 2006 and 7 sat under a tree for 9 months without food and water. And National Geographic spent some 74 days filming him, trying to work out where is he getting hydration from or his sustenance from. The conclusion was that in the darkest jungles of Ratanpuri in Nepal, the only way this guy could have kept hydrated was because they had underground filtering systems that fed him with water. Absurd. Absurd. It's very well known. The Americans have been looking at this in terms of military, and had studying some yogis who go from extended periods of time without food and water. They want to use this in terms of the military. So you can imagine where this is going. And there is another one, which is being able to die at will. And I know this sounds absurd, but I will share a story of my own teacher, a man by the name of Purunsi. In 2014, on the 12th of August, it was a Wednesday, his wife dies. On the 13th, I phoned him up and I said, give my condolences and tell him, don't worry, I'm going to come and see you. He was one of my greatest teachers, if there was one. That was the Thursday. On the Friday, so on the Thursday he says, don't bother. I'm not going to be here. I thought to myself, I wonder where he's going. So Wednesday his wife dies. Thursday I speak to him. On Friday, he calls his grandkids, tells them he's going. And they ask him where. And he says, somewhere where you can't follow me. Does a short prayer, folds his hands, and off he goes. I'm not saying it happens with everyone, but what I'm saying is there's a lot more to being human than you could have ever thought. So of these 18, 10 are minor, including the death one and the food one. These are the minor ones. The major ones are just so otherworldly that I daren't even speak about them here today. But I feel in time to come, we will have people who will exhibit them, and you may even have competitions in places like this. This event and events about the future, our future event, this event and the events of the past have demonstrated something quite profound. That one, you, me, all of us can transform our health. We can cultivate positive emotion, like compassion, self-care, which can take care of self-criticism, isolation, loneliness, low self-esteem, low confidence. We can change physically our brain. We can personally transform our personality so we become better human beings, more accepting of ourselves and able to relate with other people in a more meaningful way. And now we have seen that we can access things that are in the realms of fantasy but seem to be coming through now through the veil. The choice is yours, but you can only choose if you know what to choose from. So I'm going to leave you with a very short story. A young girl goes to her father. Father, what's my life worth? He goes to a cupboard, pulls out an old box, opens it out, and there's a big rock in it. And he says, take this to the marketplace and offer it to sale. And whenever someone asks how much, show them 2 fingers, not like this, like this. But don't say a word. So she goes to the marketplace and soon enough people are interested. How much do you want to sell it for? We'll give you £2. Stays a bit longer. How much do you want to sell it for? We'll give you £20. She goes to her father and says, guess what? I can sell this for £20. He says, now go to the museum. So she takes the same rock to the museum. The curator looks at it and he is absolutely blown away. Calls some of his colleagues and they say, we've seen nothing like this. The museum has to have this because it is a very rare specimen. On this, how much do you want from it? We'll give you £2,000. She goes home. Dad, I can get £2,000. He goes, now go to the jewelers. She goes to the jewelers. The jewelers look at this, the assayers come out, and they are blown away. An unpolished diamond of this size. Wow! How much do you want? We'll give you 200,000. She runs home and says, Dad, I can sell the rock for 200,000. He says, now you know what your life is worth. Doesn't matter where you're born, doesn't matter your gender, your color of your skin, your sexuality, or anything else. What matters is where you place yourself. Place yourself amongst those who collect plastic and trinkets, and that's all you will be left with, plastic and trinkets. Place yourself with jewelers and you will discover this infinitely precious jewel that you are. The choice is yours, and the 21st century jewelers are